To the camera. I know you're mad, but hey, Auckland, Wanganui, Road to Vegas, Lagos City, Mr. Lagidi, Eminele, and Miami, Kilo Chalet, nothing carry last.
So Israel Adesanya was on ESPN MMA with Ariel Helwani, and he talked about it quite a bit. His plans for 2021, his next fight, and yeah, it looks like Israel Adesanya has it all figured out. It looks like he has his map laid out. His next fight is 100% going to be against Jan Blachowicz at light heavyweight. And really, he said the motive behind it is really just to troll Jon Jones. He said he don't really care about belts and stuff like that, but he said it's just to troll Jon. I'm doing something that you was reluctant to do in 10 years. I did it in less than 3 years. That's his whole motive behind it. And he said the fight with Jon Jones is for sure going to happen in 2021. He said he's just not going to move on Jon Jones's time. He's moving on his time. Now, one thing that he said in this particular interview, and I got the video link in the description, it's pretty good, it's almost an hour long. He said that Jon Jones is washed. Now, that may be controversial to a lot of people, especially people who don't really follow MMA. But he said Jon Jones is washed, and that he's a Clout Trout. And he said he's watched. If you've seen Jon Jones' last 3 fights, he didn't look too great. He didn't look too good his last 3 fights, and I'm just being honest. I'm a Jon Jones fan. He didn't look too great. I'm not sure if it's he's burnt out. I'm not sure if it could be many things, right? We've seen Jon Jones look phenomenal, especially against his fight against Daniel Cormier, against Alexander Gustafsson. But his last 3 fights against guys that, don't necessarily have a big name in the sport, left a lot to be desired. So Izzy said Jon Jones is washed. And if you look at the Jon Jones' fights, I mean, he was getting hit a lot more. His technique is sloppy. He hardly uses his wrestling these days, if we're honest. He hardly uses it. And he just looked very lethargic in his past few fights. And the last one he arguably lost in a lot of people's eyes. But now he's moving up to heavyweight. And the question was asked, would Jon Jones come back down and fight you at 205? Israel said, absolutely. Helwani says, why do you say that? Because Helwani believes that Jon Jones won't entertain coming back down. He'll say something like, oh, well, you got the loser belt at light heavyweight, blah, blah, blah. But Izzy says it's an ego thing. He says it's an ego thing. Jon Jones simply can't help himself. And he will come down or meet somewhere in between to fight Israel Adesanya. Should be interesting. This is what I like about mixed martial arts, and I'm going to be following this storyline until that date happens between Jon Jones and Izzy Adesanya. I'm going to be following this because I'm almost certain it's going to happen. 2021, Izzy been saying it for years, and if you've been following Israel Adesanya, everything this guy has been saying, even before he got to the UFC, everything he's been saying, he's been following through with it, and it's been coming to pass. So I strongly believe that this fight with Jon Jones is going to happen. And he also called him a Clout Trout. I want to get to that real quick. He said usually after Jon Jones fights, he don't say nothing, unless he's asked. But every time he fights, here comes Jon Jones, got something to say about everything. You know what I'm saying? And this is what Jon Jones doing. This is what Jon Jones been doing. And I really don't have a problem with it. You know what I'm saying? Because it gives the fans something to talk about. It's building the big fight. Okay? So we're going to see how Jon Jones, he hasn't fought in a while. So it's going to be interesting to see what he do at heavyweight. As he said, what if Ariel asked Israel, what if Jon Jones loses at heavyweight? Would that fight still be interesting to you? He said, absolutely. He said it may lose some appeal with the fans, but he said that's the fight that I want, and that's the fight that's going to happen. So we're going to see how that plays out. The fight with Jan likely will be sometime in March. He said him and Dana White, it took only like a couple of minutes for them to really, get things squared away. The contract ain't signed yet, but that's the fight that's 100% happening. So, and he also said that he's going to be bouncing back from 205 to 185 because he said he walks around 205, 210 anyway. So, and he also whispered to Jon, that you don't got to put on size to fight at heavyweight, dude. You know what I'm saying? But that's just what he says. He's a firm believer that you don't really have to put on significant size to fight at a different weight class. You can kind of just come in around your walk-in weight, and you probably could do just fine, depending on your skill set. Jon Jones has the skills. We're going to see how he performs at heavyweight, and we're going to see how Izzy looks against Jan. I'm going to be following this storyline closely. Like, subscribe, holla at your boy. Peace out.